Hello, welcome from my part to this event on privatizing or outsourcing public welfare services. I am the director of Kalevi Sorsa Foundation. We are one of the organizers of this event together with our Swedish and German think tank partners, Arena Idé and Privatizing Nordic countries office in Stockholm. I would like to thank them for making this event possible. We are a progressive social democratic research think tank focused on just transition. One might think what welfare services have to do with just transition, but actually they are in the core of it. A recent report written by Janne M. Korhonen argues that Nordic welfare model not only enables just transition, but also stimulates environmentally friendly policies. You may read more from the report that is available over there together with other our reports and also reports from our partner organizations. I also want to advertise our next event on 4th of June in Think Corner of University of Helsinki that will discuss impact assessment of political decisions. That has been very topical issue discussed recently due to assessments made by the Ministry of Finance. So welcome there as well on 4th of June in Think Corner. Today we'll be discussing outsourcing public welfare services. It's very topical issue in Finland as well, after the new municipal and regional councils are beginning their work and thinking how to provide the services in the future. It's also a long-term issue, as the Nordic welfare model has evolved over the past century, and decisions we make now will have consequences for the coming decades and future generations. Therefore, I think it's essential to discuss and share experiences between Nordic countries. We surely have a lot to learn from each other, from Norway, from Sweden, but also from Germany. And I think this cooperation is important. I'm proud of the program today, and I want to thank all the great speakers that were able to find their time and come to Helsinki to join us. I also want to thank everyone for joining the event. I'm sure we will have great conversations here, and hopefully this is inspiring also for our audience online. I will now hand over to Josephine Fürst from Privatizing Nordic countries office, who will be moderating this event. But thank you and welcome from my part.
Thank you so much, Lauri and Sorsa Foundation. And of course, also a great thank you to Arena Idé and Lisa Pelling, who is our other cooperation partner around this important seminar today. Right, so my name is Josephine Fürst, and I work with democracy and welfare state policy at the Nordic office of Friedrich Foundation. Friedrich Foundation is a part of the German labor movement. And why are we here tonight? We want to look into different aspects of privatized welfare. And our starting point today will be Sweden. Once a hailed model social democratic welfare state has become a cautionary tale of privatization. Privatization has really been pushed through at the cost of quality, equality, and working conditions. And we will learn a lot about this today, and also about other Nordic perspectives. If you would like to watch this seminar or recommend it to a friend, it will be uploaded at the Sorsa Foundation YouTube after this event. Right. So tonight we'll start with exploring the lessons from the Swedish experience. Then we will move on to Norway and look into the findings of the Governmental Committee on Reducing commercial actors in public welfare. We'll then have some perspectives from the trade union sector and from academia. And after these initial inputs, we'll have a panel discussion and questions from the audience. So if you have a question, make a note, and we'll get back to that at the end of the seminar. Right, but now let's start directly with a presentation about the Swedish experience. We have Lisa Pelling here, head of the Swedish think tank Arena Idé, who has written and just published this report for us, Don't Try This at Home, Exporting Sweden's Neoliberal Welfare Experiment. So, Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Josephine. Thank you, Lauri. Thank you for having me here. And thank you for receiving me with this amazing weather. I think people who are following us online cannot imagine how nice it is outside. So I'm also extremely grateful for those of you who have taken your time to be indoors today and to be part of this event here. So I have written this report with the title, Don't Try This at Home. And I will try to tell you why you shouldn't try this at home and what it is that you shouldn't try at home. But firstly, just shortly about me. I am a political scientist, and I'm a very proud head of the think tank Arena Idé, which is a part of the Arena group. We are a progressive group of activities, a book publishing company, a daily newspaper, a communication agency, and also a think tank. We look into issues related to economic policy, to the labor market, and to welfare policy. And we are funded, full transparency, by the Swedish trade union movement. So we try to have a trade union perspective on issues that we deal with. So my presentation today has, first I will start with a very short background. I will then give 3 examples of how neoliberal privatization have changed the Swedish welfare state, and 3 examples of the consequences of this. I will then go through 3 of the most common arguments to defend this development, and then end with some conclusions and some messages for the Finnish debate and for those of you who want to forward progressive policies in Finland. I only have 20 minutes. So I will not be able to give you the full resources or the references, but they're all in this report. Don't try this at home. It's available in print here, and you can download it as well from the Fredrik Ebert Stiftung Nordic office's site. I'm sure that there will be a link as well in the transmission. So a short background. When I started working with this report, my German colleague suggested that the title should be Bullerby is abgebrannt, the Bullerby vision of Sweden, you know, Astrid Lindgren's romantic little village with children playing in the beautiful Swedish landscape, no worries, nowhere, is no longer. And it's sad to say that the Swedish model that we use to export when it comes to the organization of welfare services has turned, just as Josephine rightly said, into more of a cautionary tale, something that you should actually not copy. And one important thing that you need to know about the way that welfare services are nowadays organized in Sweden is that they are still tax-funded to almost 100%. Yes, there are some small fees, but basically we are still funding welfare services with taxes. But the way we are organizing them is not by procuring private providers with fixed contracts that are fixed in time or fixed in volume, like you sometimes do. You could tell a private provider, build me this street, it should be ready by this date, I give you this amount of money. Instead, the way of privatization has been based on vouchers. So it's a freedom of choice, a system where the private provider has no limitation in time and often also no limitation in volume. A provider of private school can open as many schools as this corporation wants, with as many pupils as they want, and there is no end in time as to when the taxpayers' money will say you can do these schools until 2030. No, it's based on the freedom of choice of the pupils or their parents to choose this school, and then it's a go. So this is an important difference to other ways of privatizing welfare services. 100% paid by the taxpayers, a very big margin of maneuver and a big liberty on part of the private providers. And we were promised that competition between different actors, the multiplicity of difference, the diversity, and the freedom of choice would give us more efficient services and services of higher quality. And now, 30 years on, my message to you is that what we have got is a number of private providers that have grown extremely skillful in maximizing their profit at the expense of quality. So this is a kind of a summary of my report. The maximization of profit, they are great. They are competing with each other. They are very efficient in this, but it is at the expense of the quality of the welfare services. So you already guessed, don't try this at home is my main message. So now to 3 examples on how this has happened, just to give you an idea of just what it is that you shouldn't copy. We have had in the last 30 years a very thorough privatization of the education system, from preschools, kindergartens, up to the common school, high schools, and as well on to adult education. Universities are still not private, but the rest of the educational system have private actors in all their sectors. And one thing that we have learned is that in order to maximize profit, and this is what the school corporations are after, they are organized under the law that guides any company that is a shareholding company. You will have similar legislation in Finland. The idea of a shareholding company is to maximize profit for the shareholders. If you, as the owner of a shareholding company, do something else, start distributing the money that you have or prioritize some other aims than just making sure that the shareholders get their money back, it's against the law. So you need to know that we have chosen this system to allow the corporations that are guided by the shareholder law to be actors within the school system. And what we have seen is that a good way of maximizing profit is to make sure that the pupils that you have in your schools are cheap. So what are cheap pupils? Well, there are pupils who do not need much attention from the teacher, so that you can have many pupils per teacher, many pupils in the classroom. So you would want to, in your communication towards the parents, towards the pupil, you would want to say, in our school, we put attention to discipline. Because if you're a parent and you have a child and you think, well, my little Ville, maybe he's not so good at discipline yet, maybe he has too much energy, I'll better put him in the municipal school. Or you will be very skillful in having waiting times for the schools. What can waiting times do? Waiting times allows you to select the pupils, because when the mother of Muhammad phones and says, I would like to put my Muhammad in your school, is there a place available? You can say, sorry, we have such a long waiting line. Muhammad has to go to the municipal school. But when Professor so-and-so, Mother of Maria, phones and said, I have this highly gifted daughter, does she have a place in your school? They say, yes, of course. She can be student number 33 in the classroom because she won't need much attention from the teacher at all. So we have discovered that the way that we have chosen to privatize schools in Sweden, namely by a voucher system, has meant that schools are increasingly segregated, where pupils with more needs of the teacher and special needs are increasingly in the municipal schools, while students that are easy to educate, that need little attention, they are increasingly in the privatized schools. And we have seen that these schools are often very profitable, but the profits are not used to increase the quality of education, but to expand. So firstly, to expand to different municipalities in Sweden, but now also increasingly expanding abroad. And one very recent example is the largest school corporation called Academedia. Academedia is as big as several of the other school corporations together. Wait, I don't know if I can. Is the microphone still working? Yes. Okay, I'll hope it works. Academedia is as big as the other large school corporations put together. They just bought 113 preschools in Finland. You should be wary, because what they are exporting is not a Bullerby, Astrid Lindgren version of preschools, but a business model that prioritizes profits at the expense of quality. The second example of the three that I would like to mention is the privatization of welfare services as a source of funding for organized crime. And you wouldn't believe me that we have chosen a system that is vulnerable to criminals. But it is increasingly the case that we discover that healthcare centers, to 100% funded by taxpayers' money, have become a lucrative business not only for international corporations. The largest emergency hospital, the one emergency hospital, one that is privatized, one of Sweden's largest hospitals, is owned by a French-Australian firm. They also have a chain of 100 healthcare centers across Sweden, not only owned by international, multinational companies, but also actually increasingly owned by criminal elements. So recently we had to close down 2 healthcare centers in Gothenburg because it discovered that they were using these healthcare centers for their activities, including tax fraud, but also including use of funds that were not as they were not intended. So this is a problem, and you will be aware that we have a very serious problem with organized crime and with shootings and with gang criminality, and we are discovering that some of the money, of course the largest share of the money comes from dealing with drugs, but a share of this money also comes from privatized welfare services. Don't try this at home, please. We have one of Sweden's leading experts here today. Mari Hupponen will soon tell you everything that there is to know about elderly care services and the privatizations of them. But I still want to mention this as one of the 3 examples as well, that the privatization of elderly care has also in Sweden led to both a decrease in the wages of the staff, but also a decrease in the quality of care. On exactly how this mechanism works, I think Jan-Erik Støstad, who is here from Norway, will be able to tell you more about. So what are the main arguments that the proponents of this development use? Because obviously you would have people that think this development is good, is something that we should maybe even expand to new areas in Sweden. There are rumors that the next reform that they're proposing is the privatization of prisons. That's a very profitable business in Sweden right now because prisons are overfull, mainly due to the way that organized crime is funding themselves. But the argument of freedom of choice is a very important argument as the core. What you need to know about the freedom of choice is that in practice, freedom of choice is very limited. You might live in a small place. There are 2 private elderly care homes. It's not as if you choose, I go to this one or that one. You will take the one that has a place available when you need it. You might have a number of schools to choose from in your city, but you will have to choose the school that is closest to your home or closest to where you can bring your kid or where the kid's friends go. So in practice, people do not make well-informed choices on the basis of quality, and it is very difficult to choose on the basis of quality because who are you to trust? And the very important thing is, what is quality? Jan-Erik Stöstad will talk more about this, but it's obvious for welfare services that what is quality for a 15-year-old pupil is it is easy to get a good grade. That's a great quality. You will choose that school, of course. You don't have to be that much, and you can get a nice grade and go on to a nice university. That's not quality for the rest of society. Of course, it's very scary to know that a lot of people have their education from schools that prioritize giving out grades. The one new word in the Swedish vocabulary is grades inflation. Can you imagine? So that's one thing that you need to know about freedom of choice. It's often limited. I've also already told you that it's very profitable for private providers to direct their services towards pupils and patients who are cheap. So you will have a healthcare center placed in a socioeconomically well-off area because the patients that would come to you, they will not need an interpreter as in a socioeconomically disadvantaged area. They might not have other illnesses at the same time, so the little illness that they have is easy to cure. So you will have loads of healthcare centers in the city center and very few in the areas where they are mostly needed. So people that are in need of choosing a high-quality healthcare center, a high-quality school, in practice often have a very limited choice. And again, the second argument is that competition will enhance quality. So I've already told you that the freedom of choice in practice is limited, so the competition is limited as such, but you would also have to ask in what way will competition lead to enhanced quality? Well, if private providers compete with quality, that is great. But if private providers, like the case with schools, compete with it being easy to give good grades, well, that's not quality. And one important argument is also that profits are needed to enable expansion. When people criticize, why are you making profits on the pupils, on the patients, on the elderly in the elder care homes, instead of reinvesting whatever you save from more efficient working methods or by paying the staff a little less? Why are you taking this money out and investing it somewhere else? Well, the private providers will say, we need this money because we have such an amazing service and would like to provide it also in your neighboring town or in another part of Sweden. And nowadays, what they will want to do is to take the taxpayers' money that they have earned in Sweden and expand to other places. They argue that if they have no profit, they cannot expand, but welfare services that are paid to 100% by taxpayers, there's no much need of investment. You can take a bank loan because within 1 year or 2 years, you have everything back because taxpayers will be paying for you. So don't copy is my main message, and I will just finish by encouraging you to tell me who needs to hear this? I published an article in Hufvudstadsbladet last week, and I'm very happy to participate in the Finnish debate somehow, and in other ways as well. So please invite me again, especially when the weather is nice like this. I'm very happy to come again. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that brutal introduction to privatization in Sweden. So I have one sports question for you before you can sit down again. So when you were doing research for this report, were there something specific that just surprised you the most?
Well, one thing was that obviously I've written this report for the German Friedrich Ebert Foundation. I thought I was writing it about Swedish welfare companies expanding to Germany. Mm-hmm. And I just stumbled upon examples of them expanding to Finland. One of these, buy 113 kindergartens in a go. They've bought elderly care centers, also one big company, in 5 different locations in Finland in a go. I thought, I'd need to go to Helsinki just to warn of this development, because I think the Finnish debate is less romantic about Sweden. We know each other better. You will not just, buy into anything any Swede says.
Like the Germans.
Like the Germans! But I think the Germans are, they still have this very romantic view of the Swedish social democratic welfare state, and you need to shake them to the fact that we have more of a Milton Friedman neoliberal nightmare than a Astrid Lindgren kind of summer house.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so now we're moving along to, we're leaving Sweden and moving directly to Norway. And I would like to welcome Jan Erik Støstad, who was, you headed the committee. And I think I might have invented the English name for it now. I call it the role of commercial and non-profit actors in community welfare services. I don't know if that makes sense.
Public welfare services.
Yeah. And we're really curious to hear about your findings and the work of the committee. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Josephine. I usually don't say this when I get around, but I like Finland, and I especially really like Finns. And I'm really privileged to be here today. This is a complicated and deep subject. And I've got 15 minutes. But I will refer you to the blog I've written at Kalevi Sorsa Foundation, going more in depth. Also, I have this report, which I'll tell you a bit more about afterwards. This takes 20 hours to read, but there are the content list, which is able to take a look at. And then finally, in fact, I've written a book on welfare services, which have been translated to Finnish, Parempaa palvelua. So if you want to take a look at some deeper and perhaps more political views, you can take a look at that book. I will give you a few facts about Norway, talk a bit about Norway, then I'll give you some highlights of the report, and then lastly I will try to say a bit about what's really so special about these welfare services. Why are they so difficult to govern? That's the content or this position note I'm going to see. Now for Norway, there is a tough and hard political debate along the left-right axis in these welfare services in Norway too. Has been for 20-25 years. In fact, one of the reasons I got really politically interested was just this topic. That was 25 years ago. And so I'm enlisted in the Labour Party and started working in the trade union and so on because of this topic. So, this is about the top 5 subject topic. It's in Norwegian politics. It's and of course why welfare services are essential for the Nordic model, which we call the Norwegian model, and for everyone. for their families, local community, and society. So it's no coincidence. 15% of the Norwegian GDP is on these services, and 20% of the employment in Norway is going to hospitals and so on. So this is really vast, this is really huge. Now, the share of commercial providers in Norway is on average 8%. 8. In Sweden, it's about 20, I think. So that's kind of reference. However, among the big four, as I call it, the big four welfare services, it also varies a lot. Within elderly care, it's 6%, the hospitals, 5%, the schools, 1%, child care, 30%. Norway is an outlier when it comes to child care. But also when it comes to child welfare, the most vulnerable to really much youth and children needing very much help, there the commercial share is 30%. So this varies a lot. The non-profit providers has 7% among almost the same as the commercial providers. All these providers are regulated, I would say heavily regulated. So we can't only look at the ownership issue. We have to see do you regulate the user choice? How do you regulate the kind of funding you have? How do you regulate competition? And so on. That's also important to know when you're going to discuss it and govern it, that these things sort of mix, policy mix, which is important. And remember that these markets, when you take providers from private providers in, they are quasi-markets, as economists say. They're tax funded, and the price level is stuck. There's no flexible prices equating demand and supply. Now, to the report. This is a government public official report. It was spurred by the Socialist Left Party in Norway, but it was the government of Jonas Gahr Støre, now sitting, who commissioned the report. It was the task was how to phase out commercial providers from welfare services in Norway, or to regulate them tougher. That was the task. The background also from, let's say, people more from Labour Party, Centre Party, would be we are concerned about this level of 8% lifting higher, perhaps towards Swedish levels. So that was also a reason for the government to take this proposal from the Social Left Party in and make this report. And it was finished in August last year. It is 400 pages long. It was a majority of 9 people who agreed on the report. 2 people from the persons from the employer side disagreed strongly. So it is and was a controversial report in several respects. We covered 7 welfare areas, and I think we dealt with most of the sort of structural issues which is of interest, which also Lisa have told you something about. We did, however, not discuss the level of funding, the amount of money going into these sectors, and we did not discuss either how to get enough professional people to do the work. So that was put aside and set in the mandate. Also, equally interesting things. So I'll give you 6 main takeaways. First, scaling back of commercial providers is possible. It's a question of political will. But it needs to be prepared very properly, and you have to redistribute funding from the commercials to the public or non-profit providers. And you must be prepared of tough resistance from the commercial sector. Takeaway 2, quality, as Lisa mentioned. Quality is hard to quantify for just these kind of services. That means that contracts, they will be incomplete. And not only that, but the providers will know more about what's really happening on the ground than the governing bodies. So there is an information advantage from the providers towards the governing bodies. So that's the second. And that is not a big problem if the goals are aligned, if the providers have the same goals as the government, as society, then that may not be a problem with this informational asymmetry. But commercials, as we know, have a profit motive. And most commercial providers, I would guess, I think, is decent and honest, but competition may force them to exploit these informational asymmetries, what they know more about than the governing bodies. So they may be tempted to, and perhaps have to almost, to cut corners and prioritize profits. For instance, like giving inferior service to elderly with dementia during the nighttime, something like that, and other many examples of that. So, so this has some drawbacks: risk of inequality, segregation, increasing taxpayer cost, especially perhaps in the healthcare hospital sector, where it's easy to generate demand, which the taxpayers then have to pay. Bureaucracy to govern this. Grade inflation in schools. We've seen social dumping examples in the labor market, and also criminal participation. Then point 4, user choice. They may be good for many, but it increases these risks, and especially inequality and for the vulnerable, most vulnerable, and segregation perhaps. We have cream skimming, where the providers try to attract the most profitable and push away those who are not profitable. And we have that the people with most resources are more active searchers, and different other ways to yeah. So, and then in addition, we should remember that these are quasi-markets. So free user choice is really not free. There will be queues, or else you have to have a lot of overcapacity. Put money into that, and I don't think anyone want many vacant slots all around the welfare services. So, so the fifth takeaway was that commercials have been critical, but they also has advantages. They are more flexible, often more dynamic. And in the two, from the employer side, they said, yes, we have these asymmetries and the possibilities of sort of cutting corners, but the regulations take care of this, and enforcement take care of this, so this isn't that such a big deal. So also as progressives, we should take care of these kind of arguments and try to take a pragmatic as well as ideological stand in these issues. It also could be argued that you could increase diversity with commercials. Last one, also public and non-profits must improve. These services are difficult to govern, even also in the public sector, and especially the report takes note of that innovation happens in commercials, non-profit, and public providers. But what's difficult is to spread this innovation throughout the country. And that is a special challenge for the public sector to spread the best practices, and there should be put in place systems for that. Going into the last third, here I would say what really makes these welfare services so special. And of course, all kind of products, they are different from each other, but here I think different when we try to govern them. What are so special with these services? And I think this is an issue which is analytically, but politically, rhetorically, but also for governing in practice, very important to get a grip on what kind of services these are. And our take in the report on that is that there are three characteristics which sort of single these out compared to ordinary private market goods. And the first is not surprising, I think. They are basic. We need to have these services. We need to have a basic education. We need to have a hard operation if that's necessary. The second is that the users here are not the average citizen, but they are vulnerable. Children, very sick, people with dementia and cognitive problems and so on. And the problem with that is, in this connection, is that it's difficult for them to understand the situation, the context, and take decisions as, let's say, ordinary consumers in markets. So that's the second characteristics. The third is perhaps what we don't think that much about. They are really, really complex. Before I thought that things are in the public sector because they are important but simple. No, they're in the public sector because they are difficult. They are very, very complex. And these are complex because they must be adapted individually. They need professional competence. They have externalities, so it concerns your family and your local community. They are multi-dimensional in that you have your operation, but you also have a sort of hotel or food restaurant. So there are many dimensions to the product. And not least, last but not least, they're very, very relational. And this explains also why it's so difficult to measure the quality of these services. So these basic services, vulnerable users, and complex products, these three dimensions simultaneously, they explains in a sense why these services are very special and may help to explain these drawbacks coming up for putting out these in the markets. So that is sort of our take on what is so special with these services. And my personal view is that this is perhaps the main thing for the progressive movement, to understand the nature of these services. For if we cannot explain why these the services are so special, then we are very vulnerable to that privatization that commercials trying to do. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
There's lots of important learnings from this committee outside Norway as well.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So now we will focus on how privatization affects employees and look at the Swedish elder care service. And I would like to welcome Mari Hupponen, care expert at the Swedish Municipal Workers' Trade Union, to the stage. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Now you can show my beautiful slides. Thank you. My name is Mari Hupponen. I work as an expert, as an erityisasiantuntija, you would probably call it in Finland, utredare, in a very large Swedish public sector union with over 500 6,000 members in the public sector. In Finland, our sister organization is called JHL, so that way you could probably understand what we are dealing with. Kommunal organizes care workers in elder care, healthcare, schools, preschools, bus drivers, firefighters, everyone who works in the public sector that is not entirely public anymore. Kommunal, as are every trade union in our corner of the world, of course, a democratic governed organization. At every Kommunal Congress since over 10 years ago, members have called for a tougher policy regarding the question of privatization, profit motive, and for-profit employers in welfare sectors. So this question is very important for the members of Kommunal. In a larger you can change the... Oh, it was my fault. Sorry. In a larger context, the problem of marketization and private sector is bigger than just the for-profit employers. Even municipalities are managed by the same logic since the 90s, something you might know called new public management. Municipalities don't do this to make profit, but they do this to keep the production costs low. They always want to streamline. Every budget after every budget will be a bit more streamlined. And this in a context of elder care or welfare services in general, we can have quite catastrophic consequences, as elder care is extremely staff intensive. It's not something that you can do more cost effective easily, or make an innovation that will solve the question of care. It's very staff intensive. And the consequences this far in Sweden have, because this has led to elder care being a very underfinanced and under-regulated sector in Sweden. This affects care access, this affects care quality, and this affects work environment, which is the main question for Kommunal. And as a result, after 30 years of this Leka affair that they are playing market in the public sector in Sweden, elder care has actually the highest sickness rate in the whole labor market in Sweden. But this said, that the municipality sector is not good either, otherwise I would be lying, but there are differences. We can see that the grade of profit incentive has consequences. On 5 occasions since 2014, Kommunal has compared private and public elder care employers by comparing employment conditions, job security, salaries, to understand how profit is generated in a very staff-intensive sector that is elder care. The premise of the Swedish privatization political idea during the 90s was that competition will lead the employers to compete over the workforce, and thus lead to better conditions for the employees to choose from. This has not been the case. The premise didn't become a reality. In all of these cases, we have, this is a report that Kommunal has written 5 times. In all of these cases, we have seen that the results have shown worse conditions for the privately employed assistant nurses, care aides, practical nurses. So what we can see is that the profit motive incentive in elder care can largely be linked to savings on salaries, job security, and work environment. And last Thursday, we actually published a new version with fresh statistics on how it is right now in Sweden. And for example, the for-profit employers have 2,300 kronor lower wages, salaries than municipalities in average. And they also have worse job security, and they have a larger proportion of part-time employees, something that is generally a huge problem in Sweden, not so much a huge problem in Finland. Something that we also know is that a larger percentage of the staff in municipal non-profit elder care has a practical nurse education, lähihoitajakoulutus. And also, like something that's also been said by Lisa and Jan-Erik is something that's very weird with the Swedish emphasis, this extreme emphasis on privatization and customer choice, is that we don't have any relevant data to base these choices on in elder care. There is no official statistics of how an elder care facility is staffed or if the staff has an education or not. So you're basing your choices on something that's, I don't know what. There's also even interesting academic research on the matter, so which I highly recommend. I think my take-home message here today is that the profit-driven incentives lead to an incentive structure that compromises the quality of elder care and work environment. And something that's a huge issue in Sweden as in Finland is that the demographic change, that we really have to start taking care of the staff, taking care of our elderly. And either if you're an employer that's a municipality or a for-profit, which maybe according to us should not exist, we really have to be able to take care of the staff working, and we don't afford any bad employers in the elder care sector. Usually when there's a scarcity, that something becomes like a high-value product, and that is qualified staff. So we really have to take care of all the practical nurses of Finland and Sweden. Societies should act accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mari. I got one question for you. When your trade union representatives go to these different elder care centers, for example, to negotiate, do you notice a difference when you negotiate at these private companies or more the municipal ones?
Negotiations with the for-profit companies are much tougher. We are just right now negotiating the collective bargaining, collectively bargaining for the agreement in the private sector is really tough.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that really important presentation.
Thank you.
So now we will have our fourth and last presentation, and I would like to welcome Ville Routiainen from the University of Jyväskylä. Okay, that's the comic relief. Sorry about that. And you're going to help us with the perspectives on privatization and marketization of the Finnish early childhood education and care system. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. I will look into in my presentation, I will look into the marketization and privatization of welfare services from the perspective of Finnish early childhood education and care, ECEC, from now on. The Nordic model, so-called Nordic model, is based on unique interpretation of the idea of universalism that emphasizes equality, social cohesion, common responsibility, and citizen-based rights to certain welfare services and benefits, such as ECEC, early childhood education and care, which is also often viewed as one of the cornerstones of the Nordic model. In the Finnish early childhood education and care system, the principle of universalism is reflected in the availability, accessibility, affordability, and uniformity of the system. Availability is demonstrated by the understanding that ECEC is a public responsibility, and municipalities have statutory obligation to provide services for all citizens and all families in need, of course. Accessibility refers to universal right of families to access ECEC services. Affordability, in turn, is supported by relatively low ECEC fees, ranging from €0 to approximately €300 per month per child. And uniformity is promoted through the regulation of both the structural quality and the content of ECEC. In addition to universalization development, during around past 20 years, Finnish ECEC has adopted ideas from the so-called market logic. The ideological premises behind market logic emphasizes, as we have heard, competition, freedom of choice, individual responsibility, and self-regulating of markets. According to general market logic, the freedom of choice and competition ensure high quality and flexible ECEC system that satisfies families' different ECEC preferences at low price. In Finland, the market logic has shaped the ECEC system through somewhat intense marketization and privatization. This development has been enabled by new kind of demand-side subsidies granted to families for purchasing private services. The privatization becomes visible in how private sector's share in ECEC provision has grown quite rapidly, being around 18% today. Marketization, in turn, refers to parental choice and competition between service providers through demand-side subsidies, vouchers, and private daycare allowance. In addition to quantitative change, there has been qualitative change in private ECEC sector as well, as the traditional small local entrepreneurs and third sector's non-profit operators have been accompanied by larger growth-oriented for-profit ECEC companies. There are actually one key or two key differences between these demand-side subsidy models, vouchers and private daycare allowance. Vouchers are usually income tested, so the customer fees that families have to pay usually are quite close to those compared to public sector. But the private daycare allowance is more fixed, so especially low-income families' customer fees might be much higher in private sector than they would be in public services. In addition, in the voucher system, municipal authorities have also ability to regulate private sector and, for example, prices of the services better than in private daycare allowance system. This is important later. Municipal administrators and politicians often justify public support for private provision of ECEC services with several key arguments. These are familiar from the previous presentations as well. One argument is that privatization is viewed as a way to respond to fluctuating service demand, and also as a way to outsource investments in ECEC infrastructure in municipality. It is also considered as a means to reduce public expenditure in EC-EC. And privatization is also seen as a way to enhance parental choice and to introduce market mechanisms in the field of EC-EC. Okay, next we examine how markets has responded to demand. The development of privatization has not followed a uniform trajectory. Rather, it has increased these parities between municipalities. In some municipalities, there are no private services at all, and in some municipalities, the private sector share is around 40% or something. Municipalities have also autonomy to choose which subsidy model they implement in their municipality. A closer examination reveals that private services, particularly for-profit providers, are overrepresented in urban and densely populated areas and in a zip code areas with the highest socioeconomic status. Among private options, voucher-funded centers are more evenly distributed than private daycare allowance centers. There is also limited research on the potential quality difference between public and private EC-EC. However, available data suggests that families using private services are slightly more satisfied with their services than families using public services, at least according to one study. In contrast, preliminary findings of upcoming study indicate that the share of qualified staff is lower in private services, especially in voucher centers, than in public services, which indicate that the structural quality would be lower in private centers. Finally, some points from the family's perspective. It appears that families' attitudes towards public and private provision predict their EC-EC decisions. Families who prefer private EC-EC are more likely to use services supported by private daycare allowance. Those who are neutral often opt for a voucher-based centers, and families with preference for public provision naturally select a municipal center. The families who have selected private EC-EC naturally see location and availability as important factor. However, families also value home-like facilities, a sense of safety, and particular pedagogical or philosophical emphasis. This brings us to an important question. Does this lead to segregation, as previous presenters have demonstrated? It appears so. Families using private daycare allowance tend to have higher incomes and higher education levels than those using public services. And also those using voucher system are also typically highly educated. And if we look at the private services in general, we can see that children with special educational needs are underrepresented in private services. So, to conclude, I would say that it appears that privatization and marketization undermines the universality of the system. And it appears also that the features and qualities of the subsidy mechanisms kind of moderate the effects of market logic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So is there a specific topic where you feel like there's a need for further research to look into this?
Definitely, definitely. We talk a lot about segregation, but we don't know kind of implications of segregation in EC-EC or in school well enough. So what about social stratification caused by segregation? Does this lead to differing everyday experiences of children or to better education results in long run or something. So we don't know actually anything about the implications of segregation.
Lots to look into. That sounds
Yeah.
really important. Thank you so much, Ville.
Thank you.
Right, so now I would like to ask, we're going to move on to the next segment, which is going to be a panel discussion, and I would like to ask Marie, Lisa, and Jan-Erik to come up to the stage again, and we have two more participants for this panel, and that is Krista Kiru and Samuli Sinsalu. Hi.
Hello there.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Krista, you're a member of parliament for the Social Democrats.
Yes.
And among
Good afternoon,
many other
everybody.
things, chair of the Committee for Social Affairs and Health, and also
Hello,
former
nice to meet you. I
Minister
read
for
your
Family and
report.
Social Care. And Samuli,
Hello.
you work as a special expert at the trade union JHL.
Yes.
Right. So I would like to start to hear from you and hear what you think now after these first presentations. Is there any first thoughts?
Well, if you don't, I can start because always when I read the report and when I hear the presentation, I always get this visceral bad feeling when people talk about for-profit basic education. When JHL is the Kommunal of Sweden, or Kommunal of in Finland, same as in Sweden. We are about a third of the size, but the field is the same, and we're just a little bit smaller as Finland in many cases is. And so this public-private thing is very important to us and our members, but luckily it's not an issue in Finland in basic education. So hearing this example of Sweden, it's always the first thing that, oh, this was the world we are talking about. When we get to healthcare and other things, it's more familiar for us. But so that's always my first reaction, that this basic education can also be a for-profit activity, which is weird.
Yeah. Do you have any first thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think it has been pretty refreshing to sit here and listen these lessons learned, because I think even though we should know everything, and we actually know everything, but still we think, that how it can happen. And if we look what happens in Finland, it is not really far from happening here too, even in the large scale. So this is actually challenging, but also it is promising, because I'm working as a politician, so I have a vision that I have to do everything that wouldn't happen here. So I think it was actually pretty giving, because this is getting me very motivated again.
That's really interesting. So we have these quite grim examples from the Swedish example. Would you say, do you feel that Finland is resistant to these negative effects of privatizations? Or if not, do you think there's specific reforms that would be needed to make sure to secure a Finnish system?
Well, in the healthcare sector and social and welfare sector, we are quite market-based already with the työterveyshoito. And I was looking some stats up for today, and in 2010, about 75% of our social and healthcare workers were working for the public sector, and 25% for private sector. In the latest stats from, was it 24 or 23? It's 65 working for public sector and only 35 for private. So it's quite a big increase in just a bit more than 10 years in the social and healthcare sector in terms of employees.
Krista, do you have an idea there, something, a specific reform that would be needed, or would you say that the Finnish system is steady and secure?
No, I wouldn't say so. First of all, Ville Ruutinen just told what has happened with the very small child.
Yeah.
So this is telling us, the children, this is telling us that how the values are actually working in Finland. How it is possible, that we have led ourselves in the situation where we are at the moment. And I saw this coming already because I had a possibility to be the Minister of Education in the early 2013, 2015. It was a big thing. And this is not ending very soon. So I would say that there is a big lessons learned what we could do better. And we actually do not discuss very much about it. If you look what happens in education in general, it has been a long debate, maybe 30 years debate. We've been talking, that what could happen in basic schools in Finland, why we do not privatize them. Have we learned enough from Sweden? These questions have been the right ones, and we have hold our positions in that field. But I'm very sure that we still have to work very effectively that we can hold our positions there. So finally, everybody in Finland are quite familiar with the fact that we have a very big threats what are happening at the moment and what has been happening already in the social and health services. I think if Finns are woke up in the middle of the night, everybody knows what is the biggest example what can happen. When we had Juha Sipilä government, we had the biggest, let's say, political wish package, which was full of privatizing social and welfare services. And I think all Finns learned to take some sort of stand during those years. And I'm so happy that we have a very strong constitutional rights. And luckily, they have prepared their bill so badly that Parliament actually objected the whole thing. But it was quite a run, and I needed to be quite in the middle of that battle. So I would say that all Finns know that everything can happen if the political circumstances are right. And now we are again fighting with the Kela funding. We have a social insurance system so that we can actually give straight funds also for the private services what comes to health services. And now we have quite a battle starting in the parliament at the moment that if we can create such a system, then government is actually planning at the moment. And it's all about the question that who gets to doctor and with what kind of conditions, and especially what new and what better it brings to us. And this is actually big thing here now. And I will be very against that because of the reasons we all know.
Somebody you would like to comment?
Yeah, I can follow up on that because we can back it up with a survey we do in JHL. We do this julkisten palveluiden barometry every few years. It's a poll on what people think about the public services. We've done it in 2021, and now we did it in beginning of 2025, just a few months ago. We released in March, April, and it's quite a big majority, 2/3 of the people who prefer that the public services are provided by the public sector, that it's under public ownership and under public production. So it's quite a clear majority for especially having the services in the public hands and not bought from the market and provided in the Swedish style.
John Erik, did I see you?
Yes, I think in a way, I think we should be thankful to the Swedes because they're giving us all these warnings so that we're getting more resilient. In Norway, we don't want to go the road as Sweden is going, so that's very good. Then I think it's important to increase competence. As I said, understand these services and also understand that they are different from each other. So you need a different policy, regulation policy from healthcare to schools and so on. So that's competence, and it's also important to have political competence in the trade unions and the social democratic parties. So it should really be much better in Norway too. The last thing is I think perhaps we should also work with designing our future policy for the welfare services. When I wrote that book, which came in Finnish too, then I called it the fourth way for welfare services. And then the point there was that we don't want marketization, we don't want new public management, we don't want to go back to the 1960s either. Where do we want to go? And my answer was, I coined, perhaps not the best word, but a co-creation model, cooperation model, based on trust, but also openness. Because in Denmark, also in Norway, we have to trust reforms. Yes, we have to trust the employees, the professionals, and so on, and that's right. But you can't go back to the 60s where the doctors really, or the teachers, they had the classroom completely closed, in a sense. So again, trust and openness, that's kind of a reform I would, and we politically could be perhaps be feasible in the Nordics.
So I'm soon going to open up for questions from the audience, so just keep that in mind, and I'll just give the words to Mari. You had something
I
to
just
comment.
wanted to... Also, the Swedish public opinion is extremely against for-profit healthcare and social care and childcare and these like profits in the school system as well. And I think I love this kind of a forum where we can learn from the mistakes of others, and also think of these more strategic choices that Sweden or other countries have made that has led to this. One thing that I very often think of these days is that the publicly owned public welfare has no lobbyists. It has the people as well, but they don't have a lobby organization. They have Kommunal, they have LO, they have the unions, but they don't have it's not like the municipalities organization is a lobbyist for the public. And then I think the people, the voters, have to demand that the social democratic and left-wing parties will become that lobbyist organization for the publicly owned, because the lobbyism is so hard, and in Sweden, why even though the public opinion is against this system, why doesn't anything happen? It's because the politicians and the welfare capitalists are basically the same people. They go if they lose the election, they go to the private care companies, and then they become politicians again. It's it's very much like a ond cirkel, vicious circle.
Yeah. Yes, Lisa, would you like to come in?
Yeah, there are so many things to speak about here. I hope we have 2 weeks more to talk. But one thing that Mari says, I think is really important to know, that even though the Swedish public is very much against for-profit welfare services, these services are entrenched, and the reason they are entrenched is because they have a very strong lobby. And I think one of the things that I learned from Jan Erik's very thorough report, you should really read it. There's a summary in English, right? And we published a summary in Swedish. Maybe someone will volunteer to publish a summary in Finnish as well. Is that if you want to limit for-profit welfare services, you need to limit them to one unit, not for profits, but private providers. You need to limit them to one unit, and you need to make sure that the profits stay within this unit. I think it's a big danger that the Swedish welfare providers are now large corporations that are so mighty that they can buy 113 preschools in Finland in one go. if you are a municipality, it's difficult for you to resist such a powerful actor, and this powerful actor will also have money for two things. They'll have a lot of money for marketing. They will make a very nice advertisement for their services, and it'd be difficult for a local politician and for the local public to know, is this what we see? Is this the real service? Because the municipal kindergarten, the municipal preschool will not have a budget for marketing for good reasons, because it's a waste of money, of course, to spend it in that. And they will also have money left over for lobbying. So we have a growing lobbyist sector in Sweden that unfortunately is also employing a lot of former politicians. I learned also, if you are a local politician and you are looking into the childcare sector, and you will have a visit from the local private childcare provider. When they visit you as a politician, they will tell you, we are excellent. We are so good. All our kids are very happy here. And the parents, they are so happy. Give us some more kindergartens to run, please. When the municipal kindergarten comes and visit their local politician, what they will say, we have challenges. We have children with special needs. Can we please have some more funds? And the local politicians, what is the local politician supposed to think? They will think, well, the private provider has great quality. They have no problems. They have all happy kids and happy parents. Why am I wasting the money on the municipal kindergarten that seems to have so many problems? So you need to understand the logic of these private providers. They will always say, we are great. And we have seen again and again, particularly in elderly care, Mari knows everything about this, that they would insist on having questionnaires sent out to their service users, because they can manipulate these questionnaires and show great stats. But when you evaluate them on hardcore qualities, such as how many staff do you have for what number of people that need your care, they underperform in every way. So we are moving in Sweden towards reorganizing the way that we fund these services, towards not saying, do what you want and report back to us on some quality measures, including that people say in a questionnaire they're happy, instead of reorganizing and saying, well, you need this amount of staff for this amount of kids, for instance, in kindergarten. And when I read, and I'll stop here, Josephine, because I know many people want to participate in the discussion. When I read the yearly report of Academedia, who just bought 113 preschools in Finland, they are saying it's difficult to make profits fast in Norway, because Norway have just introduced, per law, a number of staff per kid. So they cannot be so profitable. So follow the example of Norway, protect yourself against these business models.
Okay, so Jan-Erik, thank you.
I just say that there is no English summary of the report, but perhaps Friedrich Ebert Stiftung could perhaps take
We'll look into that.
Another thing is that the Social Democratic Party of Sweden, when they have their Congress next week, there is a proposal there proposing to make such a report kind of also in Sweden as we did in Norway. So it will be exciting to see what happens with that.
Lex Jan-Erik.
Yes, do that.
It is because of him.
I think it is actually a great idea here in Finland too. In 2 years, I hope that Social Democrats will be in the government, and before that we should launch also same kind of ideas. So why not to consider it here too? But what I wanted to say is that I think that it wouldn't be the question of the private providers themselves. It's a question what kind of world and what kind of conditions we are getting. If we are getting a lot of services privatized. And I'm not really that worried about what kind of private producing style we would have, but it's more about the world and the conditions which we are getting, and few examples. So if you look at today's discussion, so most of the private producers are saying that we do the same thing with a better quality and less money, like you said already. But they also say that because we are lacking money, everybody's talking about how what to do with the deficits and how can we manage, in the coming future. So they're saying that, that you need us. This is the logic. But actually, in the same time, they say that we do not have enough labor. So we have a labor. They say that, okay, we hire people with better salaries, but it is not the case, but that's what they say. So that we would have a labor. And in these conditions, many decision makers are forced in the situation that they say that, okay, come to try then. And this is the beginning. And I think that what are the conditions and the world which we should not have because of them is actually that we are then keen on the world with the quick profits, which is not part of the welfare society in general. The second thing is that we would need continuously public funding to get also privatization to work, which is a very weird thing, but this happens. It is not cheap. We have to pay for that one way or another. And we also get the world with a very low regulation because this is the playing game, because they need always less regulation. And these are very conservative, very liberal point of views too. So therefore, this is a big question, what kind of world we are getting when we get these producers. So I think we should also focus on that side.
Yeah. Very important. Okay, so Amelie, and then I would open up for the audience.
This regulation issue is really important, and what kind of resources does the public sector have to provide the oversight that is needed to regulate the services? And then I have just one point that I want to add to that is that it also applies to the labor market, because if you move, especially regionally, big units from the public realm to the private realm, it's going to be a challenge for us in the for the labor unions, because even if the collective agreements are on paper, they are okay and you can compare them, but then if you create a new private field that you move hundreds of workers there, you might not have the organizational structure behind the collective agreement. You don't have the trained union representatives in the private field. You might have had them in the public field, but then when you move the services to the private field, then it's going to be a big challenge for us to build up the labor market regulation side there, and that's going to be a challenge if these kind of large when this shift from public to private happens. So it's one thing to have the fight, to have things okay on paper, but then you in the agreements, but then you also need the structure on the ground in the workplaces to have the trained representatives, and I'm not sure we are fully ready for that.
Right, so do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, I think I see a hand there and one there.
Okay. Hello, I'm Evelina Saari from Finnish Institute of Occupational Health, and thank you for very interesting speeches. I just wonder, and listening to the panel discussion and your presentations, you mentioned many times that it's so difficult to define the quality of care in different in elder care or in healthcare or childcare, but on the other hand, politicians still have some criteria for that, and they're quite rough, like the number of staff in a nursing home or something like that. So I just wonder, is it really so difficult? Because we do have researchers who could maybe contribute this, but so to define really the quality of care, although it is a very special service, and that definition that would cover these working conditions of the care workers and the well-being of the patients or pupils or whatever, and also the work practices. Because I myself come from the qualitative side of researching work, so I think that these could be defined. Though, or do you know any potential efforts to do that?
It's a very good question. I saw Mari wanted to answer the question, and Krista.
We thought that the political, we have followed, or because I'm a Finn, so I have followed how the elder care, the Attendo scandal in Finland in, before the election of 2019 led to the staffing quotas, henkilöstömitoitus, in elder care in Finland, and we are very for that kind of a model in Sweden as well. We believe these kind of structural, you can't bullshit them kind of indicators, that is staffing, the qualifications, that kind of indicators should exist and we should regulate them. But the Swedish system has prioritized other things that are like freedom to make profit, maybe, but I think that's the, and actually, as said, the Swedish Social Democrats will have their Congress next week, and they are finally for kind of a lot of these kind of regulations, for example, the preschool regulations for the first time. So we are very, not in elder care though, but we are impressed. It's a start.
Krista?
Well, I think it was a very interesting question, indeed, because sometimes I think the same question, some ideas. First of all, it's easy to say that, for example, early childhood education could be having a quite good quality if they follow the instructions law is saying, law is requiring, and that would be, for example, how many over 3-year-old ones can be with one worker. So that is one point of view. In the same time, we could say that we still have a dream, at least for Social Democrats. When I was a Minister of Education, I actually proposed that we could have 30 students by one teacher in the basic school. And hey, come on, it's almost 10, 12 years back, and we still won the elections by having two wishes, and the other one was this one. So it could be good definition. The good way to define what is quality service could be to say that how many people are for those ones we are serving for. That might be, but it's not the whole truth, because we know that, for example, in the early childhood education, this is not always that. You can actually play tricks, and you can end up in the situation that you can actually not follow the law. And this is something what we have been struggling on the way. But in the same time, what is about the employment conditions? We would say that probably these same ones, like Mari said already, that maybe this one is giving a good employment conditions. When we had, during the last government period, when we proposed that we would have a better conditions for the workers, but also better conditions for the people who are living in the elderly care units. So we had societies, conservatives and liberals saying that no, we should not put it in the law, because they were frightened that maybe this one is actually getting more harder to privatize and also get for-profit producers more to come. So I would say that maybe this is one of the examples from the different fields, how we could define what is quality. But in the same time, it is so sad to say that most of the regulation and the requirements which are related to regulation are asks and demands that we should not have anything like this in the law, because then there would be bigger markets, bigger possibilities to gain more profit. Mm. So that is not quality, at least.
I think I saw a second question at the back.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentations. There are plenty of lessons to take home. I'm Riitta Särkelä and I'm one of the decision makers in Vantaa-Kerava welfare region. I have one wish and one question. And the wish is the new council members in welfare regions will start in the beginning of June. Are you ready to, some of you, organize this kind of event for the new decision makers? I think it's very, very important things to know, because there's lack of money in welfare regions, and there is very big risk that some of the welfare regions are trying to find such a solutions which actually are going to be very expensive. And privatization could be one of the options which might be on the table. And my question is, if you think privatization in Sweden and the process you've had in Norway, what has happened non-profit providers, let's say NGOs? I've been working for years in NGOs, and in Finland NGOs have been quite a difficult situation for many years already, but still existing in this area, providing for non-profit. So what has happened to those non-profit organizations? Do they still exist?
Okay, Lisa, would you like to answer this one?
Are you inviting us back to Finland in June? I'm so happy to come. I'm really happy to share the report and to prepare something. I think privatization in healthcare, speaking about what Jan-Erik said, healthcare are extremely complex services, really difficult to govern, but privatizing them doesn't make it easier, and there are so many dangers, and one main danger is the possibility to create demand. And we've had a very unfortunate development in Sweden where we have had healthcare services online. So online doctors who are been able to offer services 24/7, and any one of us would like to have our own private doctor. We can phone a doctor any time of the day, but what kind of services can you provide online? Well, you can give advice such as, oh, you have a headache, take a headache pill, go to bed a little bit earlier. And we pay massive amounts of money for advice that people could easily find themselves, and taken away resources from the really sick, the people that really need healthcare services. I'll be more than happy to provide that.
Mari?
Yeah, to comment on the question of the non-profits role, it's minimal in Sweden. There have been a lot of political projects to increase the part of the non-profit, for example, produced by ideal organizations, the church, because this was really much a large part of the arguments during the 90s to privatize, that we want this multitude, diversity of different kind of producers. But actually there's something that's so ridiculous happening right now. Your home town, Uppsala, has procured elder care services that they are using the new Swedish law that they can preserve the procurement to just the non-profits to increase this part of. They don't want everything to be non-profit. They just want to be a bigger part of the services will be non-profit. And the lobby organization for the private for-profit producers are suing the town.
So it was one care home that the municipality, there is a 100% taxpayers' money. The municipality said, for the sake of diversity, let's have this one care home run by a non-profit organization. And the 5 giant elderly care corporations went to court and sued them. But Uppsala won. So,
But they're suing,
yes.
they're taking it higher.
Yeah, they're taking it higher. Uppsala won in the first instance. Yes. But this has happened also in the school sector. The more time, the less the non-profit actors. A very unfortunate development that I discovered when doing research for this report that really makes me want to cry is I tried to show you on my slides how Academedia, this largest corporation, one of their business models is that they have different trademarks. So they are not called Academedia Kindergarten. There's no one preschool called Academedia. They have different, very, very different names. And one of the chains that they have now is a chain that they are calling Montessori. You know Montessori didactics, left-wing, progressive, Italian, beautiful thoughts about kids using their creativity and free play and whatever, what have you. It's called Montessori Mondial, so it's owned by Academedia, and they're buying up small parent-led corporations that use this pedagogic, but they are small, they might be in debt, they have problems in the association, as you have. They get an offer they can't refuse on Academedia, and whoops, there's nothing left of the idea, but the name is there. So if you really want to defend small-scale, not-for-profit, like parents' cooperatives, you need to defend them by law, and you desperately need to regulate them because Academedia is coming to buy them up.
Right, so we're running out of time. I think we had one last question somewhere here at the back.
Thank you. My name is Eero Kivinen. I'm with the Central Association of Finnish Pensioners. Don't worry, we're not a care provider or anything. But I would ask about to follow up on the previous question, do you see any value in essence in the third sector providing these services, since there's by definition no profit to be made even there? Is there any point to even have third sector service providers, or should it all just be provided by the public sector?
Super, Jan-Erik and Krista.
I would say yes. And the report, also to answer you, gives the non-profits quite an extensive role to play. They are popular in Norway. As I said, they have 7%. Some are big too, but also many small. But they have come under pressure the last 10 years because of the marketization, because they have to follow the same rules as the commercials, so that's a problem. And there's been problem with the legal side, where you have possibility to reserve competition for the non-profits, but there are legal attacks from the commercial sector, which are very demanding. So we have, in fact, the report has also a part report delivered 1 year before. Early last year, that was delivered, made a new definition of non-profits. And the report itself, which is important, but also the report itself is trying to make a more robust regime for non-profits, for welfare delivery. And I think perhaps also for political reasons, if you have a policy to sort of reduce the commercial part of the welfare services, then it's also politically wise to have at least an understandable policy for the non-profits, and they have been, the experience is that they are good at getting to understand new situations in the social sphere, so they are sort of innovative in that sense. But there are different kinds of also non-profits, of course.
Krista?
No, Well, this is actually related to Rita's question too. I would say that without non-profit organizations, we would not have, first of all, some of the services. For example, Finland has been struggling for years' time that who is taking care of drug-using pregnant women. Nobody wants to make profit out of it because you can't get profit. And public units are thinking that this is not our task. So organizations, non-profit organizations have been the ones who have been refilling this field. This is just the one example, but if we look at the history, we have a lot of examples. And therefore I think that the second important reason, what is the benefit or what is the meaning of non-profit organizations? Secondly, I would say that it is a force which is actually making society to change. If we do not have non-profit organizations, we do not know where we are going in the coming future. We do not know what kind of services we should have in the next decade, because we do not have any forces who do not think, that how can I make business of it, or the other ones who are thinking that how can we serve everybody, how we can refill these constitutional rights. So we need to have such a force here, and it is important that we have a non-profit organizations. But their the state of non-profit organizations are very, very, very bad at the moment because our right-wing coalition have cut many 10 millions of funding. And this is not just the part that who is giving salary to them or who is giving funding. I think it is just a part of the same coin. So it is important that we also giving public funding for those organizations.
Super. So we are actually running out of time, but Lisa, if you can be super short, you wanted to have come in.
Yeah, I totally agree with this, and I think that the non-profit sector, you need to cultivate it. I think it's an important task of public policy to cultivate, to support, to make sure that there is such a sector. I think one topic that we didn't touch so much upon was the difficulty to recruit staff. You have the same demographic problem in Finland that we have in Sweden, and the private providers are often saying, you need to allow us because we are more attractive to staff. We will help retain nurses because they will want to work for us. I think Mari has very convincingly argued that this is not the case. When the private providers are there, they will pay the staff less, they will make them work more. We've also seen now in Sweden, we introduced 15 years ago a system of certification of teachers, so it's a teacher certificate. And 2 days ago, the Swedish state audit, Riksrevisionen, was asking, why are there not more certified teachers? We've had this system with certification of teachers for 15 years, and we have not been able to increase the number of certified teachers teaching in our schools. And the one thing that we could tell them from the think tank perspective, well, you've just looked at the supply side. You keep educating certified teachers, but you're not looking at the demand side. And what is the demand side? The demand side is the for-profit school corporations. What do you think they prefer? They prefer to employ someone off the street who's very cheap to employ, or a certified teacher. They will not employ the certified teachers to the same extent because certified teachers are more expensive. So also in terms of recruiting staff, for-profit welfare services will tend to recruit less staff and less qualified staff because staff is the largest cost, and they will try at any cost to keep costs down because keeping costs down means a possibility to increase your profits.
So thank you so much for this really interesting discussion. There's so much to take up and keep discussing, but maybe we'll have further seminars. It looks like there might be some interest. Thank you so much to our excellent panel. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wonder how would the freedom of
Very
choice
interesting.
Yeah.
work with the for-profit prisons.
Thank you so much.